Welcome, friends, to another late night edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are two retired New York City police detectives. And if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you'll get all things DutyRon and this guy, Ed Wallace, over here when we go live or upload another video. And hey, tonight, as promised, we're going to go over the affidavit, the probable cause affidavit. And, you know, people have been talking about this all day long. Bryan Kohberger was brought before a magistrate court today, and he was read his charges. This is a formality, but we have a special guest for you tonight. And I know you and I are really excited about this. We've been talking about it all day, back and forth. We have a criminal defense attorney from the West Coast, and she's going to be joining us live in a few minutes. Ed, I wanted to ask you, how's everything going over in your neck of the woods?
Going very good. Going very good. I was very happy watching all the coverage today and getting the details, because I was concerned that the judge's gag order might have affected this, but it didn't. And so got to read that affidavit and got a lot of sequencing of events there and the way things kind of played out and what pieces of the puzzle came first and what came last. And it's all fallen in place.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of people that were really worried. DutyRon.com received the most amount of inquiries in a 24-hour period because we take, we look at the analytics pretty strongly. We had the highest amount of questions and emails coming into DutyRon.com, and a lot of those questions were about this gag order. So it's important that we, get to speak about this tonight, and we bring on the professionals to speak with you guys. But before we get into it, I want to say a special thank you to the Patreon supporters, the channel members, the replay viewers, the live chatters, and the people who leave us comments down below in the comment section. You guys are what makes this a great community, and we give thanks and praise to each and every one of you. We really don't upload many videos, Ed and I, because we really love the live interaction. So if you could, please let us know down below in the comment section what you think about live videos versus uploaded videos, because in 2023 we are going to be doing a little bit of experimenting. We're going to be doing some uploads, and we'll see how that goes. I know, Ed, you're a fan of the live. You don't like the upload.
Yeah, I don't like the upload. I like the live.
Yes,
I like to be able to interact with you in real time.
Absolutely, and Ed actually interacts after the live stream in the comment section. He is a bad in the comment section. He really,
Mama Jamma.
Yeah, I got to keep this like a family show, so I had to bleep out that little curse word. All right, guys, I'm going to play. It's a small piece because we have our guest, and I'm just chomping at the bit to bring her on. Andrea Burkhart from Burkhart Law, a 15-year criminal defense attorney. She's licensed in the state of Washington. Close to, obviously, our defendant resided in Washington. His home state was Pennsylvania. The crime took place right on the border of Idaho and Washington, just a short jump from the crime scene. So we're going to have her on, but I want to play this little piece because I think this is important for everybody to listen to and hear. So I'm going to add this to the stream. This kind of gives us a good overview, and I won't play it all, but I want to play most of it.
So as Morgan said, and touched on, the probable cause affidavit released today gave us a whole lot of detail as to what happened in those early morning hours on November 13th, both in and around the King Road house and all the way to Pullman, Washington, 10 miles away. The affidavit is the statement of Corporal Brent Payne, a 4-year veteran at the Moscow Police Department. Corporal Payne arrived at the King Road house that Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, on November 13th, around 4 in the afternoon. For the next 4 pages of that affidavit or so, he described what he saw at the scene and what he was told by the surviving roommates. The DNA that you heard Morgan talk about that was found on the sheath snap, the snap of the sheath that was found in the bed next to Maddie, obviously one of the biggest breaks in the case. The others, as you also heard Morgan mention, the white Hyundai Elantra owned and driven by Kohberger, and his cell phone, both with links to his parents in Pennsylvania. The car had Pennsylvania plates until 5 days after the murder. That was when Kohberger allegedly did change his tags, I should say, registering his Elantra in Whitman County, Washington, where he was going to school at Washington State. However, within the school, it was still registered as being from Pennsylvania. His phone Corporal Payne later learned, was also under his parents' AT&T account in Pennsylvania. And it was these two pieces of information, along with those security and traffic cameras in the area, a police officer's instinct about unusual neighborhood traffic, and that cell phone showing up on area towers that helped Moscow police by December 23rd know they had their man and his whereabouts that morning. At 3:26 a.m., a white Hyundai Elantra was seen in Moscow on security cameras, and it was seen on Indian Hills Drive here. And it was followed at 3:26. So by the time it got to about 3:28, he was seen at the intersection of Steiner Road and Highway 95. We assume he went across the street, made it onto Taylor Avenue, and made it in the general area of King Road a few minutes later. That's because at around 4:04, a white Hyundai Elantra was seen multiple times kind of in this area, starting at about 3:29 till about 4:20. What they saw on some of these security cameras was this car pull up here onto King Road, then pull onto Queen Road here, and then eventually make it to this apartment complex, turn around, come back to the intersection at Queen and King, make a three-point turn, turn back around, and find some parking somewhere in this area. Because then what happened was at 4:20, later that morning, just about 15 minutes later, a white Hyundai Elantra was seen speeding out of the area of the King Road apartment complex. Then beginning at about 5:25, a white Hyundai Elantra, or a sedan that looks just like that, was seen on 5 different security cameras coming through Pullman and also into the Washington State campus. First seen coming up Johnson Road here, then where it hits Bishop, and then onto Stadium Way and made its way into the Washington State campus. It passed Grimes, as we zoom in here and show you there. There's Nevada Street. It went past Grimes. It was picked up there. It was picked up at Wilson, which is right there. And then it continued all the way around. If you follow this away, it picked up on Cougar just a few minutes later. That road continues all the way around Stadium Way, up to the right, up Valley Road, and then you turn up this place here, right here. This would be the Steptoe Apartments, the home of 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger in this apartment complex right there. 12 days later, on November 25th, the Moscow Police Department asked area law enforcement to be on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantra. On November 29th, Washington State University Police found a 2015 Hyundai Elantra registered to a student, a 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger, who's a criminology student, a graduate criminology student studying at Washington State. His car was found about a half hour later on that November 29th, right here in this parking lot. His driver's license picture and the information also matched the roommate's description of the man she saw in the house the morning of the murders. That pushed Moscow police to look into Kohberger's cell phone data, a number they got after pulling him over for a traffic violation in August. So that brings us to the cell phone data to kind of corroborate what they saw on traffic cameras. So that starts here at 2:42 a.m. on November 13th, the morning of the murders. That cell phone pinged in the area of the Steptoe Village Apartments where Kohberger lives. At 2:47, it picks him up leaving his apartment complex and driving south through Pullman on its way, we assume, to Highway 270, which takes you to Moscow. That's this map here. It turns off at 2:47. It doesn't ping on any more cell phone towers. Then 2 hours later, at 4:48, that cell phone pops up again on a cell phone tower just north of Genesee near Blaine in this area. And for the next few minutes or so, from 4:50 to 5:26, they tracked it, moving west toward Uniontown, then back north as it made its way back to Pullman. And then at about 5:30, that cell phone once again pings in Pullman right here on Johnson and Bishop as it made its way back into Pullman and onto the Washington State campus.
I wanted to play that because, Ed, that shows a great deal of activity, not only the day of, but the day, the morning after. And this is telling here. But let's bring our guest in before we jump into this. And I wish I had like little screens in the background like that guy had. So without further ado, from Burkhart Law, our good friend. Hey, thank you for hanging in there, and thank you for being here with us. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with such great YouTubers just like yourself, and we appreciate you coming on with us tonight.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
You know, the internet is going wild right now with this probable cause affidavit. And, you know, what better of a person to have on here than a criminal defense attorney, someone who studied law for 15 years or practiced law for 15 years. I'm sure you studied for quite a bit more than that. I just wanted to take just a minute for you to introduce yourself to the audience, because some of my folks probably don't know who you are and some might. But if you could, just give it a little bit.
Sure. So I'm Andrea Burkhart. I am a practicing criminal defense attorney in Eastern Washington. I'm about 2 to 2.5 hours from the Pullman-Moscow area. I live in a city where probably every third person on the street went to WSU. So this case has been on my radar, you know, since it happened, of course, but I really hadn't followed it closely because, very frankly, I was not expecting it to land in court quite this soon once it, you know, wasn't solved within a pretty short period of time. So I have been paying very, very close attention to everything that has come out since Mr. Kohberger was identified and arrested. And I am hoping to be able to attend some of the proceedings in Moscow and seeing what we have to work with in this case.
Wow. That'll be awesome to get your firsthand look at it if you can attend it. I want to say again, before we start going, thank you to everybody who has become members and super chats. It's just when we're playing media or if we're talking, it's kind of hard for us to acknowledge it. So I saw all of them disappeared, but thank you everyone who became members and sent in super chats. So we greatly appreciate that. Ed, I want to go to you first before we go to the law side of this thing. We saw that either the parents and or the defense side has brought in a crime scene reconstruction expert out of, I think, Seattle, I believe, but from the state of Washington.
Tacoma.
Tacoma. Thank you. What's your thoughts on that, Ed, being that this is right up your alley? You do this as well. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it's not unusual, and especially in a high-profile case with the death penalty possibilities. Yeah, a good defense attorney is going to bring in their own forensic experts and review everything on paper, review the lab work, review the evidence collected. They're going to go to the scene and see if they can do anything. But the scene has already been altered. The scene has been worked up by the law enforcement agencies that were involved. They did their evidence collection. They did their photography, scanning, and they'll get. You know, Discovery will give the defense team all of this information. Okay. There's very little they can do after the alteration has occurred into the scene in terms of bloodstain pattern analysis and things of that nature, where swabs were taken and so forth, where the footwear impression was taken. I mean, that stuff has already been done and it's gone. Right. Okay. So there's no seeing it in situ again, only through the crime scene investigators' photographs and their 3D laser scans will their defense experts be able to review what it looked like the night of the crime and the days thereafter when they were processing the scene. So, I mean, look, forensics doesn't lie, so it doesn't take sides.
Right.
So I've been hired by defense attorneys. I've been hired by prosecutors. Okay. And you know, I do my analysis and I let the chips fall where they may.
Outstanding. Yeah, and that's what I like about you. You know, you call the balls and strikes. You're not on either one side or the other. So that's the great part about this. And you know, your expertise is invaluable to any defense or any prosecution. I want to just address the elephant in the room real quick. And this is going to go to you, counsel. Everybody's going nuts about this information in a probable cause affidavit about one of the surviving roommates seeing this killer right up close and in person, walking right past him. It reminded me, you know, not necessarily exactly of the scenario, but Saving Private Ryan, where soldier goes by, the soldier that was pulled by Tom Hanks off of the typewriter, and he's there with his rifle, and the soldier goes by him, goes upstairs and kills the sniper with the knife. You see him stabbing at him, and he's listening and hearing, but he froze. Your thoughts on that from a criminal defense side?
Well, I had really just a visceral reaction, honestly, to reading those details in this affidavit. It did come as a surprise to me, just because so many little pieces of information, have been made public. Obviously, we see now from this affidavit how much was not, but for them to be able to keep that private was really so important. Obviously, not just for the integrity of the investigation, but for this young girl's well-being. I am just horrified at the idea of what she's going through, the type of survivor's guilt that she is undoubtedly struggling with, the terror that she has probably been dealing with, wondering if this guy is going to come back for all this time that he was loose. So I know that she is very likely having a very difficult road right now, and I just wish her the best.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. As a parent, I don't have a daughter, but I have two sons. I immediately thought of, the emotion and, like you said, the survivor's guilt, and now the online, jump on the pile, the bandwagon. Everyone's, pointing fingers at her. And I want to just ask everybody in the chat from here in the Crime Time with DutyRon community, please have respect when it comes to speaking about these cases, because, you don't wish this on your worst enemy to go through something like this. And Ed and I have been to many, many crime scenes where, lives have been ruined and lives have been taken and families have been just torn apart. And it's the worst possible scenario for these four families and their extended families and the complete community in Moscow, Idaho. The university there, everybody is on edge. We do have this suspect in custody, innocent until proven guilty. And we are going to talk about this affidavit. It is 19 pages, and it's going to take us some time to go through it. I wanted to just get a feel from you, Ed. You read it to me on the phone today when I didn't have access to it while I was at work. What was some of your takeaways, from this? Before we go into it, but what was your major takeaway, Ed? Because everybody wants to know.
Before I get into that, Ron, can I just go back to what we were just talking about and talk about, hey, folks, this is a witness, a crucial witness that may have to testify in trial. Right. Okay. So, we need this witness to stay founded, if you will. I know she's probably going through therapy right now. Everybody behaves differently when it comes to trauma and life and death situations. And you never know how somebody's going to react. Okay. She's not a trained emergency responder. She is not a trained military person who may have reacted differently. She's a young girl that doesn't have that much life experience when it comes to these traumatic incidences. She very well could have went, as I was read there, she went back in, locked the door, and fainted for all we know. Passed out. We don't know. Mm-hmm. But she's crucial to this case, and she will have to give testimony, in my opinion. Andrea, what do you think? Will she testify?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think that there is any real way that she doesn't. She's a key part of the link, the circumstantial link that ties Mr. Kohberger to this situation. I have no doubt that they're already, if they haven't already done a photo lineup with her to see if she is able to identify him specifically as the man that she saw in the home, that they certainly will do that. So yeah, she's going to be important not only for the percipient aspects of what was going on in and around the early morning hours of November the 13th, but also just for background because of her knowledge of these victims, whether they had knowledge of this man, whether he had been in their house before, whether, just any other information that we haven't quite seen yet that might give us a link between how these individuals were selected for, this crime.
Yeah. So we need to protect this young lady, not attack her. Okay. We need her to testify on trial. Okay. And we need her to build up the strength to do this. Okay. Because she's hurting right now. There's no doubt she's hurting. Okay. And as Andrea said about the remorse that she has, the guilt that she's going through. So lay off. That's all I have to say. You know, for people that are out there making these crazy things on YouTube, leave her alone. We need her as a witness. Now, that said, going back to what Ron said, when I read this affidavit, man, did they give us a sequence of events of how things played out, okay, and what evidence was crucial and so forth.
I have so many notes on this affidavit. I'm torn whether we should go through it all or, you know, skip maybe some of the more important parts of this thing. But we looked at, and just to go over and do an overview, we looked at, you know, forensics. As you and I said, this case was going to be solved, and a perpetrator, a defendant, brought in, as I said, innocent until proven guilty. We would get a defendant in custody, with the science and with the forensics.
We said it. We said the forensics from the scene, the vehicle movements and capturing of on the cameras, cell phone data. All of this is all crucial, but crucial mistake made by the perpetrator. He left the sheath for the K-bar behind. Okay, he left it on the bed with the murder victims. Okay,
now, and what are you holding up there for the audience, folks that are just chiming in? Is that the K? There it is. It's the K-bar knife that's alleged to have been used in.
Okay, well, it's not that one. I mean, I can show that photo, Ron. You want me to show that photo of what one he left?
We're on it.
All right. So, folks, this is what he actually left. Let me open it up.
Where's Josh when we need him?
Okay. Okay. Sure. This is what he left behind, folks. This sheath right here that said K-bar on it, had the United States Marine Corps logo and emblem, and the USMC, Uncle Sam's Misguided Children, right there. This is what he left behind. And on that snap, the safety snap, let me back out. Okay. On that snap right here,
the DNA,
the touch DNA, okay, was left. All right. That was not found in CODIS. Okay. And we find by reading the affidavit, the DNA comes at the end of all the evidence. Okay. That then links him. First piece of the evidence was obviously the eyewitness and her account of the suspect's description. Then we got this piece here. Right. Then we have a latent blood footprint that had to be worked up with amido black. Now, we did a presentation on when I did the bloodstain pattern analysis training with you all, and I walked you through the various scenes where you couldn't see blood with the naked eye, but then by spraying these blood protein stain enhancers like amido black or leucocrystal violet, how it will adhere to the heme in the blood and make the blood footwear impression, shoe wear impression in this case, visible.
Yeah. So
we know that it was a van. We have class characteristic evidence that linked the sole pattern of the shoe to a van shoe. Okay. Now they probably have the size and the width and the size, the length and the width of the shoe impression. So that would give them a size. And then hopefully there's what we call individualistic evidence in that pattern. And that would link it directly back to a shoe that he owns. Now, I'm praying to God they find that shoe. Okay. Right. And they may have already found it when they did the warrant on his apartment. Okay. Or they may have found it when they did the raid on the house. Okay. So I'm hoping they find that shoe.
And I want to ask you something in regards to the shoe, because I was going to get onto this later, but you already brought me into it. Isn't it true that everyone wears their shoes in a different way? In other words, the step to the shoe. I know when I wear out my shoes, it's to the right side of the sole of the shoe. You know. So like the right side, and some people are left side, instep, whatever.
Right. Everybody has a different gait. Everybody has a different stride. Everybody, and you know, the shoe starts out all the same, but once you start wearing it, you develop wear patterns. Right. And these wear patterns are indicative of you and how you walk. And in addition, over time, you'll get defects into damage into the sole pattern. And the more damage that goes to the sole pattern, the more unique the sole pattern becomes.
Yes.
Okay. So again, we go from class characteristics, identifying the make and model of the shoe, to now individualistic, saying, hey, we found this Van shoe in his closet, and what they'll do is they'll photograph it, they'll ink it, they'll create exemplars, and they'll compare it to the blood footprint. Now, hopefully, they also took blood samples from the bloody footprint to identify whose blood it was,
right?
Which one of the victims, right? And that was all. And hopefully, of course, the Lacard's exchange principle. It is not a theory, folks. A theory is unproven. A principle is proven. Okay, so it's Lacard's exchange principle. It's proven. He transferred that to his vehicle.
Right.
The blood on the bottom of his soles of his shoes. Okay. And hopefully they can find that in there. And hopefully they find a shoe, and maybe there's still remnants of blood there that he couldn't see with his naked eye and he didn't properly clean up or something. I'm hoping for all of these things. So that will be putting the pieces of this puzzle together, and it'll be more damning than you can possibly imagine. Okay. And then fibers. Right. On the bottom of the shoe, that from the location, fiber on his clothing, if they can find the dark clothing that the witness described he was wearing, and then link this all through scene, vehicle, his apartment, his office. They did warrants in all these locations, and the house back in Pennsylvania.
Hey, I want to just say thank you to Stephanie Windsor. She came over she says, Andrea sent me. Is it Andrea? Is it Andrea? I don't know. I'm calling her all different things just to be safe. She says, she sent me. I'm now a new subscriber, fellow New Yorker. Welcome aboard and thank you. And I'm encouraging, obviously, everybody to go over at the end of this show to go and check out her channel. It's linked in the description, and I will be showing it towards the end of this live stream. So thank you for the support. I want to also say thank you to WJS2000 for the $10 super chat, and everybody who I missed. I apologize. They only stay up for a short period of time, but I had to interrupt Ed to get to this before it went away. So I thank you guys for that. I want to go to you, Andrea. The job of a defense attorney is to represent their client. And some people would argue, and I asked folks to send me questions to DutyRon.com, and guess what? I have 3 of these pages that I handwrite them because I'm old school. Instead of going to my phone and holding up my phone and reading them, I write them out. Most of the questions, and some are redundant, but most of them are really good questions. And obviously they're all good questions. But the common question is, how can a criminal defense attorney defend somebody like this?
Well, it's a good question. And I think that just requires clarity about what the role of the defense attorney is. Obviously, I am bound by ethical constraints. I'm an officer of the court. That is something I take very seriously. I recognize that may not be universal, but there are bad eggs in every profession. And so a big part of the role of a criminal defense attorney is really the ability to be objective about a case. It doesn't do my client any good for me to paint a rosy picture of what might happen, should he decide to go to trial or something that isn't reflected by the reality of the situation. So it's important to be able to be objective about the state's case. And then from there, that is really what determines what your tasks are. Sometimes all you can do as the criminal defense attorney is advise somebody, this is what prison is going to be like. Here's the classification process you're going to go through. Here's the timing of the transfer. And just basically being a resource to sort of help them understand that aspect of the process. Sometimes there is a lot more to work with in a case, a lot more questions, a lot more doubt. So it really is a very individualized situation. Every case is unique. Certainly, I have my thoughts about things that the defense is going to be looking at in this case, given the contents of this affidavit. And so I'm sure we're going to get to that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that explanation, because a lot of people, and Ed and I, we're friends with Joe Murray, who's a criminal defense attorney here in New York. He was a police officer turned criminal defense attorney. He comes on quite often, and he says the same thing. We're commissioned by the courts. We have a set of standards that we need to abide by, and people ask the questions like, what if a defense attorney knows, or something comes out while they're representing their client that shows that they're guilty, or that they find out? It's their obligation. They're obligated to tell the court, hey, this is what I have. And I'm sure it's happened, and at the end of the day, people just think that the criminal defense attorneys are looking to try to get somebody that is, that has committed a crime off, just to get them off and release a bad guy into society. That's not how it goes. So I'm glad that you explained it.
Criminal defense attorneys get a bad rap.
They do.
They're painted broadly as being unethical and so forth. But folks, there's a lot of injustices in our society. And if you should ever get jammed up and you're innocent, okay, you can't tell me it doesn't happen, because it does. Okay, you're going to need a criminal defense attorney.
And they're going to be your best friend.
Okay. So, and it's their job to look at your case and help you with your situation. And my sister's a criminal defense attorney. She was a prosecutor, and now she's a criminal defense attorney. Right. And hopefully she'll, God willing, she'll be a judge soon.
Ed, can you answer this question? I can't let this one go by. Someone said, I thought taking evidence out of a garbage was a no-no. I know that to be not true.
Well, yeah. Once you lose any expectation of privacy when you throw it in the garbage, okay, and you put the garbage out to the street.
But here's where she's going to come in with this argument: that garbage, if was on the private property of the parents,
right?
Is that arguable?
But that's why I said you had to put it out to the street.
Yeah, this is a curtilage argument is what you're getting at. There's this kind of definition of the areas that are intimately associated with the home. That's the curtilage. It usually consists of things like the walkway, the front yard, the driveway. And so there is some additional protection in those areas of the home. But the other thing I would point out too is that where this can get complicated is because we have federal standards for constitutional limitations on police activity, but it's also extremely common for states to have their own independent constitutional jurisprudence. States have their own constitutions. Many of those, including my own, have held that some of those provisions are more protective than the protection that you get under the Fourth Amendment. So it's not that uncommon in my practice to see a situation where, okay, this would satisfy the requirements of the Fourth Amendment, but it does not meet the standards of what would be, Article 1, Section 7 under the Washington Constitution. So that's going to be a factor in this as well, is identifying if there are any independent bases under Idaho or Indiana law that could potentially, call that into question as well.
Right.
Well, I don't think that we're going to see a fruit of the poisonous tree here with this, okay? Because all they did there was get the father's DNA and said, okay, so the suspect DNA from the crime scene is related to the DNA recovered from the garbage can, and the father cannot be excluded as the source of the DNA from the garbage can. Okay, so now from there, he's arrested because PC was made. A warrant for his arrest was issued by a judge. Now, when you get arrested for this type of crime, DNA samples are normally taken as long as with fingerprints and photographs on your booking. Okay, so now that sample goes to the lab, and voila, it matches the sample they pulled off this from the crime scene. Okay. Yeah. So now they got him. But again, and that comes at the end of the case, because the affidavit tells us that the critical stuff was the car, the videos of the car, the cell phone and its movements. Okay. Right. And they're not even getting into any other deeper digital searches that they may have done on social media and his laptop and
no mention
books,
devices,
any writings that he may have, journals, any notes he took, because it appears now from the affidavit he may have conducted surveillance on these people because he was in and around this place multiple times prior to the homicide.
Yeah. Yep. For quite a period of time, he was cell phone pinging in and around the crime scene, the address. So Mary sends in a super chat and she says, this, not meaning you, but the defense attorney that's representing Mr. Kohberger, looks like his victim's type. Can she handle him? I would think so. There was an argument that was put up to me on DutyRon.com, and it was presented to both you and I, Ed, why this defendant was brought out for this first appearance. And this is just, read him what he's there for and what his charges are against him. Why he wasn't in shackles and cuffed. We see that in a lot of cases. I guess jurisdiction to jurisdiction does things differently. I know in New York, if there was somebody brought in a defendant on a quadruple homicide, he would be shackled and cuffed, front cuffed. Your thoughts on that? Is that something commonly done in Idaho? Or?
It's a good question. I don't have any insight into Idaho's procedures in particular. I can tell you that where I am, we have case law on this for pretrial shackling. There has to be an individualized evaluation and determination by the court as to what the risks are and therefore what the safety measures need to be to ensure the courtroom security. So it may be a situation where there is something similar like that in Idaho. Another possibility, though, is that because certainly in the trial context, there is a large body of constitutional law that basically makes it very difficult for a defendant to be in shackles in the courtroom in the presence of the jury. It's just considered so highly prejudicial because it makes him look dangerous. And once you have it in your mind, oh, this is a dangerous guy, that is tilting you on that scale towards, being afraid of him. He's maybe guilty. And so it's just considered very unfair. So often you'll see, like with the Darrell Brooks trial, for example, they have, these electronic stun belts that can be placed under their clothing or on their leg or something like that. So it's not visible to the jury, but it's also, not just leaving him there in the courtroom completely unrestrained.
Right.
So the court may have those types of considerations in mind as well, not just because obviously this isn't the trial phase yet, and so that constitutional law doesn't necessarily apply, but knowing that this is going to be televised at some point, there's going to be a feed of this proceeding that's going to be out in the public. They seem to have been very, very conscious of just doing what they can to ensure the fairness of the process, to make sure that he gets the fairest shake that he possibly can, that the trial is done in the courtroom and not in the realm of public opinion. So I think that may very well have been a consideration here, that knowing the public is ultimately going to see these images, to give him that benefit of the doubt of, being able to appear as a free man. Free, but
yeah,
as an unrestrained man.
And let me add to that while I have you on full screen. I know, Ed, you got something, but do you think that they can get jurors in that 25,000, population there? Do you think he can get a fair shake? Can they grab a jury pool of his peers? We saw, a lot of high-profile cases over the course of 2020 and 2021 with police officers involved in, we can talk about many of these things. I don't want to stir the chat up, but we've had many high-profile cases that were all over the media that they were able to try within that jurisdiction. What's your thoughts on this case?
Well, the thing with being a high-profile case is that in and of itself doesn't necessarily make it difficult to pick a jury in this community, right? Because when a case has international exposure, you don't fix that problem by going to Boise. If everybody in Boise has heard of this case too, the issue, isn't really going to be solved by taking it out of that community. Where I think the risk is in this particular case is simply the number of people who are going to be involved, who are going to have information, be witnesses, who have touched this case. Given the size of this community, very likely that there's going to be a lot of the jury pool is going to know the people that are involved, that are going to be witnesses, and that's a little bit more of a challenge from my perspective to be able to deal with. So it's, I mean, I certainly think it's likely that they'll move for a change of venue, although I don't think it's definitive. There are reasons why, from my perspective, Moscow is a pretty good place for them. But it would be a challenge. And so if they did stay in Moscow, it's more than likely that they would just give it a shot. They would bring in the jury panel. They would go through the voir dire process, just basically see what the exposure and what the potential biases are. If at that point it's clear that that they can't get a clean jury panel, then it just makes it a much stronger case to move it.
So you feel the defense will ask for it because you got nothing to lose?
Well, they do have something to lose. That's the thing. The community where they have landed. So Idaho is a pretty red state. I'm not going to get super political here, but it's rural, it's agricultural, and so typically your best shot at finding what are conventionally going to be seen as defense-friendly types of communities are going to be in your large cities or in your university towns like this. So the risk that they have is, okay, we're in a community where we have a pretty good jury pool. I did on my channel a profile of the judge who's likely to be presiding over this case.
Judge.
Judge.
I watched.
It looks from my perspective like he's the judge you want as the defense lawyer on your case. He comes across as very fair, very receptive to defense arguments. So the risk that you have is if you roll the dice that you're going to get it out of Moscow, you don't have any guarantee over where it ends up. So it can very much be an out of the frying pan and into the fire type of situation. To try to improve your venue situation here.
So it sounds like you're saying, you know what you got, you don't know what you're going to get.
Exactly.
And now also when it comes to picking a jury, one of the questions you as a defense attorney would ask the jury, have you viewed this case in the media? Okay. So that's why it was important that they didn't bring him in shackles in this televised hearing that they had today, and it seems to me they're bending over backwards. They stopped the cleanup of the crime scene. Okay. Now, I'm still not clear on how this judge got involved in it and who made the application to the judge to stop the cleaning. But they're giving the defense team and affording the defense team an opportunity to go there before it was cleaned up, which I've never seen before. Quite honestly, I've never seen that before. But they held this so long. So, at this point, what difference does it make? Hold it a few more, weeks or whatever the case may be. But they visited the scene. The defense team visited with their experts. I saw the lawyer there, and I saw several other supposed forensic experts brought to the scene to go through it.
Hey, I wanted to ask quickly what your thoughts were, Andrea, is about the survey asking for the criminals' reasons and talking about their emotions and so forth. That Reddit thing. It was in the probable cause affidavit. Are you surprised that you saw that in there?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's creepy. In retrospect, it looks really bad. Yeah. And the thing that really stands out from this affidavit, from my perspective, this is a circumstantial case. Now, I say that people think that's a bad thing, or that means, they're going to lose or something like that. Not at all. The overwhelming majority of criminal cases are circumstantial cases, because unless you have an eyewitness, unless you got caught on camera doing it, or unless you confess, police are going to prove your guilt by the circumstances, the inferences that can be drawn from the evidence. And so this case is very much about that. We don't have him on camera committing the crime, but we know he was in the area, his car was in the area, his phone pinged in the area, et cetera, et cetera. So because it's a circumstantial case, the strength of it really depends on how many of those inferences can we draw, and how strong are they? So that particular piece of information with the survey in and of itself is not particularly compelling. Obviously, if that's all they had, we're not going anywhere with that. But as part of the overall circumstantial picture here, that just adds that extra little bit of weight to the inference that therefore Mr. Kohberger is the perpetrator here. That doesn't surprise me that they included it.
But I think there's going to be more forensic evidence besides the DNA and the footwear impression. There's going to be digital forensic evidence coming out of that computer. They're going to do a search of his credit card. They're going to see if he purchased the K-bar online and had it delivered to his house. Who knows? Maybe Amazon.com delivered a K-bar to him when he was out there. They have a lot more work to do. This case is not over. Okay.
No,
and
this case is really just beginning in so many ways. I mean, they're going to be going over the car with a fine-tooth comb. Obviously, his apartment, they've already done that. They find any tiny bit of transfer DNA from one of these victims, in one of those places. That's going to be really, really hard to explain away. So all kinds of details like that are going to continue to be developed. This probable cause affidavit is really the starting point.
And don't forget the dog.
Yeah, and as we can see, he has not been the most. We thought, well, this is an intelligent guy, and he's dotting his I's and crossing his T's. There was talk about people saying, "Oh, he wore a Tyvek suit going in there, or he showered before he left." Remember all those things, Ed, that we were getting?
Well, he had access to all of that at the crime lab. I mean, at the school's labs, he had access to all that material. But the witness says what he was wearing.
Yeah, we now know he didn't do that. And what I hope is that also, like you said, we saw them take the tower out of his apartment where he was staying, his on-campus housing, and then he had an office. So we didn't see what they grabbed out of there, but lots of evidence that has not been processed as of yet. I'm hoping that he got sloppy and instant messaged these girls, sent them messages back and forth, and we have some text strings and so forth. That would be tremendous as well. Hey, we didn't even get a chance to open this darn affidavit, and we're at 50 minutes, almost 46 minutes.
But I think we're covering everything in it. But what's really interesting to me is I want to see if he had direct communications with BTK. They could again get the cell phone records and also emails and whatever the case may be, and try to check to see, because his professor did, and he was doing that study. I'd like to see if he actually was in communications with BTK. But let's get into the affidavit.
I'll bring it up. Do you have time, or are you in a rush? Can you stay for a little extra, Andrea?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Chat, I'm going to go full screen with this thing. Just let me know if you guys could see it good. If you can't, then I'll make it a little bit bigger. Where did it go? There it is. Let me see. Maybe I could make this thing a little bit bigger. How is that, guys? Let me know in the chat if you could see this good by pressing a 1. I know some people will be like, hey, I got my glasses on and I can't see this thing. I could go like that. That's probably as best as I can get it. Ed, you want me to read one page and then you read the next? We could do this like
okay.
All right. So this is the beginning, the statement from Brett Payne. That is the detective, the lead detective from Moscow. I see a bunch of number ones coming through. And again, thank you to everyone who is watching. This is Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. And we have Andrea Burkhart from Burkhart Law. She's got her own YouTube channel and she's a criminal defense attorney. She's kind enough to give us her time tonight, and we greatly appreciate her being here. Here's page 1. The below information is provided by Brett Payne, who is a duly appointed, qualified, and acting peace officer within the county of Latah, state of Idaho. Brett Payne is employed by the Moscow Police Department in the official capacity of position of corporal. And has been trained and qualified peace officer for approximately 4 years. Again, this was a big sticking point with everybody. Everyone's freaking out about this. Payne is being assisted by the members of the Idaho State Police and agents from the FBI. On November 13th, 2022, at approximately 4 p.m., Moscow Police Department. All right, let me say that right. Moscow Police Department. Sergeant Baker and I responded to 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho. Hereafter, the King Road residents to assist with scene security and processing of a crime scene associated with 4 homicides. Upon our arrival, the Idaho State Police forensics team was on scene and was preparing to begin processing the scene. MPD Officer Smith, one of the initial responding officers to the incident, advised he would walk me through the scene. Officer Smith and I entered the King Road residence through the bottom floor doors on the north side of the building. Officer Smith and I then walked upstairs to the second floor. Officer Smith directed me down the hallway to the west bedroom on the second floor, which I later learned through Zaina's driver's license and other personal belongings found in the room was Zaina Knodl's, hereafter Knodl's room. Just before this room, there was a bathroom door on the south wall of the hallway. As I approached the room, I could see a body, later identified as Knodl's, laying on the floor. Knodl was deceased with wounds which appear to have been caused by an edged weapon. Also in the room was a male, later identified as Ethan Chapin. Hereinafter Chapin. Chapin was also deceased with wounds later determined, in parentheses, autopsy report provided by Spokane. Redacted, a complete redacted page. County's
do you think that redacted page is the autopsy information?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I think this redacted page is just that it accidentally picked up the backside of the second page. It accidentally two-side scanned it.
Because it continues on right here.
Yeah.
Well, wait 1 second though. If you go back there, it's important that one aspect there, folks. Now we have the victim on the floor of that room on the second floor, and where the blood was coming out of the wall.
Right, the infamous blood drip. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so it continues on to say the county medical examiner, redacted, dated December 15th, to be caused by sharp force injuries. I then followed Officer Smith upstairs to the third floor of the residence. The third floor consisted of 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The bedroom on the west side of the floor was later determined to be Kaylee Gonzalez, hereafter Gonzalez room. I later learned from review of Officer Noon's body cam, and this is people are chomping at the bit to get a hold of this body cam. I would say that this body cam footage will not be released to the public. It'll be released while this trial commences, and that's it. There was a dog in the room when the Moscow Police Department police officer initially responded. So they're saying there was a dog in the room. The dog belonged to Goncalves and her ex-boyfriend, Jack Decor. I found out from my interview with Jack on November 13th, 2022, that he and Goncalves shared this dog. I believe the dog went to him. Officer Smith then pointed out a small bathroom on the east side of the third floor. This bathroom shared a wall with Madison Mogan's, hereafter Mogan's bedroom, which was situated on the southeast corner of the third floor. As I entered this bedroom, I could see 2 females in a single bed in the room. Both Goncalves and Mogan were deceased with visible stab wounds. I also later noticed what appeared to be a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to Mogan, right on her right side, when viewed from the door. The sheath was later processed and had a K-bar, USMC, and the United States Marine Corps Eagle Globe and anchor insignia stamped on the outside of it. The Idaho State Lab later located a single source of male DNA, suspect profile in parentheses, left on the button snap of the knife sheath. As part of the investigation, numerous interviews were conducted by Moscow Police Department, officers of the Idaho State Police Detectives, and FBI agents. 2 of the interviews included BF, DM. These are the surviving roommates. Both BF and DM were inside the King Road residence at the time of the homicides and were roommates to the victims. BF's bedroom was located on the east side of the first floor of the King Road residence. I want to stop here just for a second because there was a lot of confusion about the locations and the rooms, and it was not totally contradictory of what we were hearing, but it just, people were confused about what we're going to be reading in these coming pages. I believe that the bedrooms were on the first floor of the surviving roommates. But at some point when we read here, Ed, you're going to take it from here. They mentioned that that DM sees the perpetrator inside the home up on the second floor. Now that doesn't mean that she didn't hear, she heard this commotion and came out of her room and went up those two little steps, or whatever those little steps that step up to that second floor where the exit sliding glass door is. So I don't know, Ed. I don't know if I'm further confusing people here, but it did in this reading get a little confusing.
Well, there's more than two steps though, from the ground floor to the first floor where the kitchen and everything is. It's two steps down into the kitchen from the living area. Okay. But she was she upstairs on the second floor, or was she on the first floor? I'm a little confused myself. That's why I was taking notes when you were reading, because when I read it, I'm reading it and I'm taking notes. But now hearing you, I'm taking additional notes. But let's continue though. Based on numerous interviews conducted by MPD officers, ISP detectives, and the FBI agents, as well as a review of the evidence, I've learned the following. On the evening of November 12th, 2022, Chapin and Kernodle, I don't want to butcher these names, so you were doing so good there, are seen by BF at the Sigma Chi house on University Idaho campus. You give the address at 9 p.m., November 12th at 1:45 a.m. On November 13th, BF also estimated that at approximately 1:45, Chapin and Canoodle returned to the King Road residence. BF also stated that Chapin did not live in the King Road residence, but was guest of Canoodle. I butchered the last names. So
Alves and Mogan.
Right. We're at a local bar, the Corner Club, they give the address in Moscow, and that they were can be seen on video footage provided by the Corner Club between 10 p.m. on November 12th to 1:30 a.m. on November 13th. At approximately 1:30 a.m., they leave, can be seen on the video at the local food vendor called the Grub Truck, who live streams for his truck. Okay. It says here that the law enforcement captured that video. A private party reported that they provided a ride to the two ladies at approximately 1:56 a.m. from downtown Moscow in front of the Grub Truck to their residence. DM and BF both made statements during interviews that indicated the occupants of the King Road residence were at home by 2 a.m. and asleep, or at least in their rooms, by approximately 4 a.m. This is with the exception of Canoodle, who received a DoorDash order at the residence at approximately 4 a.m. Law enforcement identified the DoorDash delivery driver who reported this information. DM stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the second floor.
Yeah.
That's where the confusion comes in.
Right.
DM stated she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. by what she stated sounded like
Gonsalves.
Gonsalves. I'll say it for you guys.
Gonsalves playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms, which were located on the third floor. All right. So a short time later, DM said she heard what she thought was
Gonsalves.
Thank you. Say something to the effect of there's someone here. A review of records obtained from a forensic download of Canoodle's phone showed that this could also have been Canoodle, as her cellular phone indicated she was likely awake and using the TikTok app at approximately 4:12 a.m. DM stated she looked out of her bedroom, but did not see anything when she heard the comment about someone being in the house. DM stated she opened her door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying coming from Canoodle's room. DM then said she heard a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." At approximately 4:17 a.m., a security camera located at 1112 King Road, a residence immediately to the northwest of 1122 King Road, picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper followed by a loud thud. A dog can also be heard barking numerous times at 4:17 a.m. The security camera is less than 50 feet from the west wall of Canoodle's bedroom. DM stated she opened her door for the third time after she heard the crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. DM described the figure as 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. The male walked past DM as she stood in a frozen shock phase. The male walked towards the back sliding glass door. DM locked herself in her room after seeing the male. DM did not state that she recognized the male. This leads the investigators to believe that the murderer left the scene. Ron, you want to take over?
Yeah, but this, I want to talk with Andrea about this. This is for me, when it comes to court, this is going to be major sticking point for the defense. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, because she's saying he was masked, but then could see his bushy eyebrows. She describes him as 5'10" or taller, but also says that she froze. And that time period from 4:17 or 4:25 is what they're making, between 4 a.m. and 4:25 that these murders occurred. Now we have a 911 call at 12 noon. I got to put us back on to talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely something that the defense is really going to have to take a look at. There's explanations for it from my perspective. The most important one, of course, is going to be hers. We don't know what the answer is. It's entirely credible to me that you go through a shocking type of circumstance, and your mind kind of wants to rewrite it in a way that makes you comfortable. You don't tend to embrace the horror. So it's entirely possible to me that, yes, she was terrified, but just managed to kind of convince herself, well, it was probably nothing, and went back to sleep. There's the fact that, it sounds like she's been woken up throughout this process, kind of normal to be disoriented through that. The possibility, we don't know, but people have been at parties and stuff. There may be, drugs or alcohol involved. So all of these things can be perfectly innocent, and from my perspective, understandable reasons why she, didn't just immediately call 911. She doesn't know who the guy is. Maybe isn't sure if this is something that is she's supposed to be scared about or not.
Right.
And she doesn't know anybody's dead.
Yes, exactly. She doesn't know that there's a problem here. And so the mind really is amazing at what it will do to try to keep you safe. And so it simply would not surprise me at all if that's really what happened here. She just interpreted the situation in the way that was the least threatening to her, which is, weird, maybe somebody had a weird visitor or a new boyfriend, I mean, whatever, and just wrote it off and went back to sleep. With the identification, that is definitely something that they're going to look at. There is a large body of research on eyewitness identifications, their reliability. It's pretty well established that when you're under stress, kind of contrary to what the common understanding is, you're much less likely to get an accurate impression of facts and circumstances and stuff under those situations than when you're calm and reasoned. So her fear under this circumstance may, be something that, the defense can focus on that to argue that's going to affect her ability to accurately receive impressions, to accurately report, what she saw. That said, it's pretty easy most of the time for the state to come back and be able to say, yeah, but isn't it a remarkable coincidence that what she described happens to look like the guy that has all of these other circumstantial links to the situation that happened? So I don't think any of those are likely to be real strong, but they are certainly going to be issues that have to be explored.
Right. And isn't it?
Okay, ahead.
No, please.
And the question is why did this defendant leave her and not and say?
I bet I have to. This is a terrible thing to say, but I imagine he regrets it because she was a critical part of this investigation. Had she not been able to provide that identification, I don't think they get the cell site location data. They don't have enough to identify his particular Hyundai Elantra as one that is worth targeting without him meeting the description of the person that she described. So she is an absolutely critical component in this investigative chain. And had he not left her alive, we may not still know.
Yeah, and given the brutality of the attacks of 4 people by one person with a knife, he's probably physically exhausted at this point. Okay, you know, from these attacks, and you know, he figured, okay, I'm clad in black. She can't get a good ID on me, and she didn't say anything. She didn't do anything. Went back in her room, and he walked out the sliding glass door of the kitchen, and. But then we find out later, when we go deeper into this affidavit, cell phone records show that he came back at 9 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah. He came back to the scene of the crime. And we know that this happens in New York City. We see it all the time. We used to snap pictures, all the gawkers and people that would come back to view the crime scene. We would purposely take pictures of all the people because we may have our perpetrator there. All right, I'm going to try to speed read through this. But anytime that you see or hear anything that we're reading, just stop us if you want to make a comment on it, Andrea. All right. Okay. Let's see, where were we? So investigators believe the murderer left the scene. The combination of DM's statements to law enforcement, reviews of forensic downloads and records from BF and DM's phone, and the video of a suspect video as described below leads investigators to believe that the homicides occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. During the processing of the crime scene, investigators found a latent shoe print. This was located during the second processing of the crime scene by the ISP forensics team by first using the presumptive blood test and then amino black. Ed, you spoke about this. We have a live stream about it. I'll link it down below in the description, and we'll put it in some of the cards. A protein stain that detects the presence of cellular matter. The detected shoe print showed a diamond-shaped pattern similar to the pattern of a Vans, V-A-N-S, type shoe sole just outside the door of DM's bedroom, located on the second floor. This is consistent with DM's statement regarding the suspect's path of travel. As part of this investigation, an extensive search, commonly referred to in law enforcement as a video canvas, was conducted in the area of the King Road residence. This video canvas was to obtain any footage from the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, in the area of the King Road residence and surrounding neighborhoods in an effort to locate suspects and or suspect's vehicle traveling to or leaving from the King Road residence. This video canvas resulted in the collection of numerous surveillance videos in the area from both residential and business addresses. And now we were thinking all along that they had nobody had any cameras in that area, and they kept this close to the kudos to the investigators for keeping this close to the vest all of this time and leading the public to believe that they had nothing. I have reviewed numerous videos that were collected and have had conversations with other MPD officers, ISP detectives, and FBI agents that are similarly reviewing footage that was obtained. A review of camera footage indicated that a white sedan, hereinafter suspect vehicle number 1, was observed traveling westbound in the 700 block of the Indian Hills Drive in Moscow at approximately 3:26 a.m. and westbound on Steiner Avenue at Idaho State Highway 95 in Moscow at approximately 3:28 a.m. On this video, it appears suspect vehicle number 1 was not displaying a front license plate. And when anybody that lives in the state of Pennsylvania knows that Pennsylvania only requires you to have a rear plate. You don't need a front plate in Pennsylvania. And I believe at this time, he still had those Pennsylvania state plates, the tags.
Mhm.
They expired on the 13th, and he changed them a few days later to Washington. A review of the footage from multiple videos obtained from the King Road neighborhood showed multiple sightings of the suspect vehicle number 1 starting at 3:29 a.m. and ending at 4:20 a.m. These sightings showed suspect vehicle number 1 makes an initial 3 passes by the 1122 King Road residence and then leaves via Wellington, something drive, Wellington Drive. Based off my experience as a patrol officer, this is a residential neighborhood with a very limited number of vehicles that travel in the area during the early morning hours. Upon review of the video, there are only a few cars that enter and exit this area during this time frame. This is kind of important because it shows that very limited traffic is running back and forth at that hour in these remote streets.
And it also may suggest, depending on how much video they got, if they got several days, for example, that this vehicle was out of place. It wasn't normal there.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Suspect vehicle number 1 can be seen entering the area a 4th time at approximately 4:04 a.m. It can be seen driving eastbound on King Road, stopping and turning around in front of 500 Queen Road, number 52, and then driving back westbound on King Road. While suspect vehicle number 1 is in front of the King Road residence, it appears to unsuccessfully attempt to park or turn around in the road. The vehicle then continues to the intersection of Queen Road and King Road, where it can be seen completing a 3-point turn and then driving eastbound again down Queen Road. So they have quite a bit of video of this vehicle because they're describing here the 3-point turns and so forth, or what this vehicle is doing. So there has to be really good surveillance of this vehicle through video. So that's a really good thing. Suspect vehicle number 1 is next seen departing the area of the King Road residence at approximately 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed. Suspect vehicle number 1 is next observed traveling southbound on Wallenta.
Wallenta.
Thank you. Hey, Ed, before we go any further with this, when they talk about the 4:20 departure at a high rate of speed, when we saw those Idaho State Police investigators taking the pictures and drawing the tire tracks in the road, could that come into play here?
Yeah, if he spun his tires there, but then again, that should be corroborated by sound being picked up by the security videos that recorded the sound of the dog barking and whimpering and so forth.
And I don't think an Elantra could burn out too well anyways. They're four-cylinder, small little engines. But you never know. Suspect vehicle 1 is next seen departing the area of King Road residence at approximately 4:20 at a high rate of speed. It's next observed traveling southbound. Based on my knowledge of this area and a review of camera footage in the neighborhood, that does not show suspect vehicle 1 during that time frame. So now this is confusing. Based on my knowledge of the area and the review of camera footage in the neighborhood, that does not show suspect vehicle number 1 during that time frame.
Well, he continue because he didn't finish his.
I believe that the suspect vehicle number 1 likely exited the neighborhood at Palouse River Drive and Constantega Drive. I'm mauling these words.
Palouse River Drive.
Thank you. We need you. I need you here to make all these. And driving southern edge of Moscow, proceeding into Whitman County, Washington. Eventually, the road leads to Pullman, Washington. Pullman, Washington is approximately 10 miles from Moscow, Idaho. Both Pullman and Moscow are a small college town, and the people commonly travel back and forth between them. And we heard that early on about how people would come from Pullman to party and hang out in Moscow and then go back. It's just a quick, short run, and I guess it's commonly traveled.
All right, I'll take over from here then.
Thank
Law
you.
enforcement officers provided video footage of suspect vehicle number 1 to forensic examiners with the Federal Bureau of Investigation that regularly utilize surveillance footage to identify the year, make, and model of an unknown vehicle that is observed by one or more cameras during the commission of a criminal offense. The forensic examiner has approximately 35 years, so they go into the bona fides of the FBI agent that was doing this. After reviewing numerous observations of the suspect vehicle 1, the forensic examiner initially believed the suspect vehicle 1 was a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Upon further review, he indicated it could be a 2011 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. As a result, the investigations have been reviewing information on persons and possessions of a vehicle that is a 2011 to 2016 white Hyundai Elantra. Investigators were given access to video footage on the Washington State University campus located in Pullman, Washington. A review of the video indicated that at approximately 2:44 a.m. on November 13, 2022, a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of the white Elantra, known as Suspect Vehicle 1, was observed on Washington State University surveillance cameras traveling north on Southeast Nevada Street at Northern Stadium Way at approximately 2:53 a.m. A white sedan, which is consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as Suspect Vehicle Number 1, was observed traveling southeast on Nevada Street in Pullman, Washington, towards SR 270. SR 270 connects Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. The camera footage from Pullman, Washington was provided to the same FBI forensic examiner. The forensic examiner identified the vehicle observed in Pullman, Washington as being a 2014 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. At approximately 5:25 a.m., a white sedan, which is consistent with the description of Suspect Vehicle Number 1, was observed on 5 cameras in Pullman, Washington, and on Washington State University campus cameras. The first camera that recorded the white sedan was located at 1300 Johnson Road in Pullman. The white sedan was observed traveling northbound on Johnson Road. Johnson Road leads directly back to West Palouse River Drive in Moscow, which intersects with, help me out here, Andrea, with what?
Andrea's, she's muted. She muted herself, so we can't hear.
Oh, sorry. Conestoga Drive.
Conestoga Drive.
We're going to make her read the rest of this.
All right.
I'm happy to if you'd like.
The white sedan was observed turning north on Bishop Boulevard and northwest on SR 270. At approximately 5:27 a.m., the white Elantra was observed on cameras traveling northbound on Stadium Way at Nevada Street, Stadium Way at Grimes Way, and Stadium Drive at Wilson Road, and Stadium Way at Cougar Way.
Wow.
And then they have maps.
This is like useless because you can't really see it. But I think that show that we played, the little media in the beginning, showed the route pretty good where he traveled, where this vehicle traveled. So this just goes on to show more traveling and so forth. Andrea, you want to take this from here?
Go ahead, Andrea. They want you to read.
Sure.
The audience wants you to read.
I'd be happy to. I'm going to read it from my own screen, so you can scroll for me. Okay. On November 25th, 2022, MPD asked area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for white Hyundai Elantras in the area. On November 29th, 2022, at approximately 12:28 a.m., Washington State University police officer Daniel Tiengo queried white Elantras registered at WSU. As a result of that query, he located a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate LFZ 8649. This vehicle was registered to Bryan Kohberger, hereafter Kohberger, residing at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment 201, Pullman, Washington. 1630 Northeast Valley Road is approximately 3/4 of a mile from the intersection of Stadium Way and Cougar Way, the last camera location that picked up the white Elantra. That same day at approximately 12:58 a.m., WSU officer Curtis Whitman was looking for white Hyundai Elantras and located a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra at 1630 Northeast Valley Road in Pullman in the parking lot. 1630 Northeast Valley Road is an apartment complex that houses WSU students. Officer Whitman also ran the car and it returned to Kohberger with a Washington tag. I reviewed Kohberger's Washington State driver's license information and photograph. This license indicates that Kohberger is a white male with a height of 6 feet and weighs 185 pounds. Additionally, the photograph of Kohberger shows that he has bushy eyebrows. Kohberger's physical description is consistent with the description of the male DM saw inside the King Road residence on November 13th. Further investigation, including a review of Latah County Sheriff Deputies CPL Duke's body cam and reports, showed that on August 21st, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was detained as part of a traffic stop that occurred in Moscow, Idaho by Corporal Duke. At the time, Kohberger, who was the sole occupant, was driving a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plate LFZ 8649, which was set to expire on November 30th, 2022. During the stop, which was recorded via a law enforcement body camera, Kohberger provided his phone number as redacted 8458, hereafter the 8458 phone, as his cellular telephone number. Investigators conducted electronic database queries and learned that the 8458 phone is a number issued by AT&T. On October 14, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was detained as part of a traffic stop by a WSU police officer. Upon review of that body cam and report of the stop, Kohberger was the sole occupant and was driving a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plate LFZ 8649. On November 18, 2022, according to Washington State Licensing, Kohberger registered the 2015 white Elantra with Washington and later received Washington plate CFB 8708. Prior to this time, the 2015 white Elantra was registered in Pennsylvania, which does not require a front license plate to be displayed. This was learned through communications with a Pennsylvania officer who is currently certified in the state of Pennsylvania. Based on my own experience and communication with Washington law enforcement, I know that Idaho and Washington require front and back license plates to be displayed. Investigators believe that Kohberger is still driving the 2015 white Elantra because his vehicle was captured on December 13, 2022 by a license plate reader in Loma, Colorado, information provided by a query to a database. Kohberger's Elantra was then queried on December 15th, 2022 by law enforcement in Hancock County, Indiana. On December 16th, 2022, at approximately 2:26 p.m., surveillance video showed Kohberger's Elantra in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. The sole occupant of the vehicle was a white male whose description was consistent with Kohberger. Kohberger has family in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, learned through a TLO search and a locate tool database query. Based on information provided on the WSU website, Kohberger is currently a PhD student in criminology at Washington State University. Pursuant to records provided by a member of the interview panel for the Pullman Police Department, we learned that Kohberger's past education included undergraduate degrees in psychology and cloud-based forensics. These records also showed Kohberger wrote an essay when he applied for an internship with the Pullman Police Department in the fall of 2022. Kohberger wrote in his essay he had interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. Kohberger also posted a Reddit survey, which can be found by an open source internet search. The survey asked for participants to provide information to, quote, understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime, unquote. As part of this investigation, law enforcement obtained search warrants to determine cellular devices that utilize cellular towers in close proximity to the King Road residence on November 13, 2022, between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. These are pings, I assume. Yeah. After determining that Kohberger was associated to both the 2015 white Elantra and the 8458 phone, investigators reviewed these search warrant returns. A query of the 8458 phone in these returns did not show the 8458 phone utilizing cellular tower resources in close proximity to the King Road residence between 3 o'clock a.m. and 5 o'clock a.m. Based on my training, experience, and conversations with law enforcement officers that specialize in the utilization of cellular telephone records as part of investigations, individuals can either leave their cellular telephone at a different location before committing a crime or turn their cellular telephone off prior to going to a location to commit a crime. This is done by subjects in an effort to avoid alerting law enforcement that a cellular device associated with them was in a particular area where a crime is committed. I also know that on numerous occasions, subjects will surveil an area where they intend to commit a crime prior to the date of the crime. Depending on the circumstances, this could be done a few days before or for several months prior to the commission of the crime. During these types of surveillance, it is possible that an individual would not leave their cellular telephone at a separate location or turn it off, since they do not plan to commit the offense on that particular day. On December 23rd, 2022, I applied for and was granted a search warrant for historical phone records between November 12th, 2022 at 12 a.m. and November 14th at 12 a.m. for the 8458 phone held by the phone provider AT&T, approximately 24 hours preceding and following the times of the homicides. On December 23rd, 2022, pursuant to that warrant, so same day turnaround, that's impressive.
Yeah.
I received records for the 8458 phone from AT&T. These records indicated that the 8458 phone is subscribed to Bryan Kohberger at an address in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and the account has been open since June 23rd, 2022. These records also included historical cell site location information, CSLI, for the 8458 phone. After receiving this information, I consulted with an FBI special agent that is certified as a member of the Cellular Analysis Survey Team, CAST. Members of CAST are certified with the FBI to provide expert testimony in the field of historical CSLI and are required to pass extensive training that includes both written and practical examinations prior to be certified with CAST, as well as the completion of yearly certification requirements. There's just kind of qualifications. From information provided by CAST, I was able to determine the estimated locations for the 8458 phone from November 2nd, 2022 to November 13, 2022, the time period authorized by the court. On November 13, 2022, at approximately 2:42 a.m., the 8458 phone was utilizing cellular resources that provide coverage to 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment G201, Pullman, Washington, hereafter the Kohberger residence. At approximately 2:47 a.m., the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that provide coverage southeast of the Kohberger residence, consistent with the 8458 phone leaving the Kohberger residence and traveling south through Pullman, Washington. This is consistent with the movement of the white Elantra. At approximately 2:47 a.m., the 8458 phone stops reporting to the network, which is consistent with either the phone being in an area without cellular coverage, the connection to the network is disabled, such as putting the phone in airplane mode, or that the phone is turned off. The 8458 does not report to the network again until approximately 4:48 a.m., at which time it utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to Idaho State Highway 95 south of Moscow, Idaho, near Blaine, Idaho, north of Genesee. Between 4:50 a.m. and 5:26 a.m., the phone utilizes cellular resources that are consistent with the 8458 phone traveling south on Idaho State Highway 95 to Genesee, Idaho, then traveling west toward Uniontown, Idaho, and then north back into Pullman, Washington. At approximately 5:30 a.m., the 8458 phone is utilizing resources that provide coverage to Pullman, Washington, and consistent with the phone traveling back to the Kohberger residence. The 8458 phone's movements are consistent with the movements of the white Elantra that is observed traveling north on Stadium Drive at approximately 5:27 a.m. Based on a review of the 8458 phone's estimated locations and travel, the 8458 phone's travel is consistent with that of the white Elantra. So this is some consciousness of guilt evidence right here.
And I think that they're really dotting their I's and crossing their T's with this, because they are not leaving anything out. And I wanted to ask you too, there was that confusion where they went to Colorado, or where he went to Colorado. That's a long trip to be taken before this. And that brought up a lot of questions for people.
Well, that wasn't before this, right? When was that? It was December, right?
It was, let me scroll back to it.
I'm scrolling back.
So that's got to be run down by the investigators, because that was a license plate reader.
It was December 13th.
Yeah, December 13th.
Right. So it was after, but December 13th, and then on the 15th, they're in Indiana with the car stop. So it's quite a bit of travel as far as I can see. And I looked back on the map. I mean, it's not like it's not doable, but it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't seem like the ideal route to go back to Pennsylvania.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really long drive, even under the best of circumstances. I drove once from Walla Walla to Boston, and booking it, takes like 4 days. But you don't necessarily want to just go pedal to the metal, right? This is your chance to see the country. So,
right. And then there's the question, Ed, and you brought it, you said, if it was my son, he wanted me to come and drive with him back across the United States from Washington to Pennsylvania, I would do it. And yeah, I would do that too.
I've done it.
But yeah, I know you did it recently in 2022. You went to
several times. Yeah.
But my point is that given the fact of what's going on in that general vicinity, right? Somebody would say with common sense, the father has to be watching the TV and knowing what's going on. They know about a white Elantra because that came out December 7th, I believe, publicly. Correct me if I'm wrong. But December, I believe, 7th is when they were asking for the public's help in ascertaining this white Elantra. So you would think, a common person would say to themselves, well, how in God's name could this guy's father not know that there's a shitstorm happening around them? And well, I'm going to just fly out there, hop in this white Elantra that it's put all over the TV every night. And I'm sure in that area in Washington and even here in the Northeast, it was on my local TV, the white Elantra, Good Morning America, so forth. So it's hard to say, like, people are like, well, the father had to have known. We don't know if the father knew anything. But common sense would prevail here, and you would think he had to have some knowledge that this investigation is going on. And now, is it good common sense to get in the car with your son and drive across 2,500 miles? I don't know. I don't know.
I mean,
it's almost certain, of course, that law enforcement has interviewed the parents at this point. The extent to which they'll cooperate or not is hard to predict.
Right.
Clearly, their statement indicates they intend to cooperate. So, assuming that's the case, we'll find that out, I'm sure, in the trial. We may not find out before that, but there's lots of possibilities. He could have provided them with some kind of explanation. Put them on sort of a what's the word I'm looking for? Get him off track. Something to shake the suspicion off of him. So that kind of. Yes, that kind of detail is going to be interesting to find out as the case unfolds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we're almost at the end of this thing, and Andrea, you read quite a bit. So it shows this map right here, and this is what we're looking at. I wish it was a little more, clear, but this is kind of a blurry thing. But it's showing the route that this is a possible route based off cellular device location. But let's say hello to people in the chat quickly, and then we're going to get ready to wrap this up. But there's so many questions that people wrote on this paper, and I want to get to them, but we did answer quite a bit of them. Mary, thank you for the super chat. And again, this is Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, and we are here with Andrea Burkhart from Burkhart Law. She's got a YouTube channel, and I promised I was going to show that, and I want to get to that too. So what do we have? 2 more pages here? Well, actually, it's 3. The ending of it basically, in a sense, wraps up everything about the phone data.
But that one part, the one crucial part is that the phone data shows him coming back the day of the murder at 9 a.m. to see what's going on around the residence. And at that point in time, there's no police there because nobody was called to the scene yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then there's the question, to everybody that's here and in the chat, is it reasonable for 7.5 hours to go by after now what we've come to find out here, which is a bombshell, that one of the surviving roommates witnessed this defendant inside the location.
Again, she didn't know that anybody was killed at this point or injured or hurt. She didn't know any of that.
Well,
all she saw was this guy, and she ducked back into her room and locked the door.
Right, but the screaming and the dog barking and so forth.
Well, we don't know that she heard that, right? It doesn't say that she heard that. All it says that she heard there's a stranger in the house,
right.
and
Right.
then I'll don't worry, I'll help you, right?
Yeah.
Let's get to some of these questions real quick. But yeah, that was what's left of this thing is basically that the perpetrator circled back at 9 o'clock. Let's put ourselves all back on here. He circled back to the scene of the crime, as we spoke about in many previous live streams, that these killers want to come back and look at what happened or look to see what's happening. Did he go back there to try to retrieve that sheath? Or was it just what he was doing all the months, the 2-3 months prior, is going back and surveying the scene and seeing what he created and caused?
And it's a classic example of the murderer going back to the scene, and why I always take photographs of the onlookers at my crime scenes, that especially the ones that are outdoors, to see if we can capture the perp looking at us.
All right, let me get to these questions. I got 6 of them. This is from Jana and Lauren. It's a combination of the same question from 2 different people. And thank you for subscribing and being a channel member. This is to you, counsel. Do you as a defense attorney truly believe in the client's innocence, or does it not matter? We talked about this a little bit, but let me just finish. Is it hard to understand how a defense attorney can? It's hard for me to understand how a defense attorney can defend somebody like this. Thank you, and please don't take this question the wrong way.
I don't at all. It's such a common question that people have, and I'll be the first one to admit that it takes a little bit of a I guess unique personality, mindset, whatever, to even be interested in this kind of work at all. I think the most honest answer to your question is that it really doesn't matter, because that doesn't define what the job is. Guilty people are entitled to representation as well. Just because they're guilty doesn't mean that they're guilty of this particular crime that they're charged with. Maybe they're, there's a better fit with a lesser crime. Just because they're guilty doesn't establish necessarily what the sentence should be. Maybe there are circumstances that need to be brought to the court's attention that are mitigating. Maybe the person needs assistance connecting with resources like a drug court or a mental health court, a veterans court. We have all sorts of these different kind of alternative resolutions for various offenses now. So it's actually a very small part, from my perspective, of the defense attorney's job, that you have a factually innocent person that you're going in and trying to prove their innocence. The reality, the kind of dirty secret of public defense is that yes, most of the defendants are guilty, and so your role in those circumstances is often not to get them off. My role is to counsel them as well as I can about, this is what the state has. This is what is likely to happen if you go to trial. These are what your options are, and to just try to help them make the best decision under the circumstances, given the reality of what they're facing.
Right, and based off your knowledge. That was a great explanation of that. Miss Lily C sends in a $20 super chat, and she says, "I pray for the girls and their families, but what do you think of his comment? Did you arrest someone else?" That's a great question. You could read into that all you want. Was he curious? Did his father get arrested because the father drove across the country with him? Was there somebody that helped him along the way? I don't know. What are you thinking, Ed?
Well, Ted Bundy asked the same question when he was arrested.
Yeah. Was
it to throw off the investigators, and maybe that there's, to be looking at somebody else instead of him?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's really anyone's guess, and at this point, it's going to be, internet is going to go wild back and forth with this. It's anybody's guess at this time. It could be a whole different, bunch of different things. Kathy Black Rose, who's a channel member and a moderator here, asked to you, Andrea, why was the contact order for only 2 years, and why didn't the defendant have to plea at this appearance? Thank you. And thank you very much. So I'll let you take that, but we heard the judge say that she would extend it. But
Yeah,
why-
I expect there's probably just kind of a default, depending on the type of case and how long they expect it to, work its way through the system. It's common for a pretrial protection order like this to be put in place, and then ultimately, if there is a conviction, there will be a post-judgment no contact order put into place as well. So it would just replace the one that's intended to provide the protection at this point in the process. What was the other question?
The other question is what is the difference between capital murder and first-degree murder? And why wasn't he presented with first-degree murder, capital punishment at this hearing? And this comes from Patty B. Thank you. She started following us during the Gabby Petito case.
Yeah, sorry, I remembered actually the first part of the question, which is why he didn't enter the plea today. And it's because that's not what this hearing is for. The first appearance is simply to advise him and to ensure he's formally appointed with his attorney. He has a right to confer with his attorney before he enters a plea. And so that will be at the next stage of the process, the arraignment, where again, he'll be formally advised of the charges and he'll be asked to enter a plea at that point. So as far as capital murder and first-degree murder, capital murder means the death penalty, or at least aggravating circumstances of the kind that can lead to the death penalty or life without the possibility of parole. So it's aggravated. It means this is not, again, I'm sorry to kind of use this cavalier language. It's not, any old murder. It's got particularly bad elements to it. And so there are multiple aggravating circumstances under Idaho law that can potentially apply here. There's the existence of multiple victims. There are aggravators that are based on, for example, extreme cruelty, extreme disregard for human life, things like that. So the way that the process works in Idaho is that the prosecutor will have 60 days to file a notice if he intends to pursue the death penalty. And he'll have to specify which of these aggravating circumstances he'd be relying on to try to establish that. It's not uncommon because the death penalty these are expensive cases. They really up the ante in terms of the kind of resources that go into them, the time that it takes. And this is a small community. It doesn't have a massive amount of resources to throw at any case. So they are going to want to get the best possible outcome they can for, the least expense and the least, frankly, trauma to the community. A trial in a community like this and a bunch of, justice tourism could be, a real downside for them. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they wait, because in the meantime, they're going to be providing the discovery to Mr. Kohberger and to his attorney. That's going to give them a much fuller picture of the overall case and give him what he needs to make his own self-interested cost-benefit analysis of how well do you think you're really going to do here if you take this case forward to trial. So if they could negotiate a situation where he would take a plea to the murder charges without the death penalty to save them the process of going through that, that is a common resolution in these types of situations, assuming that the families of the victims, were supportive of that, and they felt that there was adequate retribution for the crimes. Then it wouldn't surprise me to see that happen.
Excellent.
It happens a lot. The plea down to save the trial and take a lesser sentence of life in prison as opposed to the death penalty.
Yeah. Hey, Just Larry, thank you for the super chat. God bless DM. She's going to be vilified by the trolls. Poor girl. Remember, he didn't harm her, and while creepy, she may have thought it was just a prank and said, "Screw this, I'm going to go to sleep." Anything's possible. But Larry, thank you so much. Upstate New York, good friend. Mickey Duff, thank you for the super chat. LJ, everyone deserves a defense. Currently, a DA is being sued for fabrication of evidence. There are plenty of DAs and judges have committed crimes. Absolutely. As we said, there's good and bad in every profession. So thank you for that question. Connor Murphy sends in a question. And again, these are all geared towards you. There's two here for Ed, and I'm going to save those for the last. Given the overwhelming amount of evidence in the probable cause affidavit, will his defense possibly advise him to plead guilty, or will they challenge the evidence the stealth, the DNA on the sheath, and etc. Thank you and please. Thank you and please.
Yeah, I think that would be premature at this point based on the PC affidavit itself. Not because it doesn't, paint a fairly compelling picture here, but just because there are gaps in it, there are avenues that really kind of need to be explored to evaluate how strong are they, how weak are they. And an example I'll give you is just this DNA profile from the sheath itself. We don't know anything about that other than that it exists. We don't know how much DNA is there. We don't know if it's associated with body fluids that can be tested to potentially corroborate an identification by, blood type or something along those lines. We don't know if it's the quality and the quantity of the DNA that's available. So those types of things can all factor in to the ability to make a positive identification of him based on his individual DNA. If it's a very low quality sample, they may not be able to do that. So those are the types of things that are going to be important for the defense to evaluate and know as much as they can before they make that type of recommendation.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And there's a lot more to this investigation that needs to be done. They need to make the connection. How did he target these individuals, or was it the house? So they have to, dot their I's and cross their T's. And this case is far from over.
Yeah.
And of course, we don't have any information about what his possible side of the story may be. We have no idea what his attorney could be hearing. We could be hearing that, the car was loaned to somebody for a period of time. We could hear, all different types of explanations to, potentially try to just get enough doubt that he himself can be identified as the person.
Yeah,
we just don't know.
His car was loaned. His phone was loaned. His Vans shoes were loaned.
Yep, exactly.
You don't know how far you want to go with this.
Somebody's pockets. It's always somebody else's pants.
Here's a few questions for Ed. Ed, do we know who the 5 mystery men were that went in after the crime scene was kind of like not wrapped up, but they had the security guards there? Remember,
the cowboy hats and all that? Nope,
yeah.
I have no idea. There's no idea who these people are and what they were doing there.
And that was Patty B. And Christina sends another one to you. Ed, according to the probable cause affidavit, police knew about the white Elantra on 11/29 or earlier.
Yes.
Why did they ask the public for help on 12/7? Good question, Christina.
I think because it hit the press because of that convenience store girl releasing information about it.
The assistant night manager. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So they really held their cards close to their vests, and they were taking slings and arrows all over the place, and they really had a lot more than anybody thought. Anybody gave them credit for. Let's just put it that way.
Let me put our guest on the spot here. Okay. Mm-hmm. You and I have been critical about this crime scene, right? We talked about people going in and out of there. And, I don't even like to bring this up, but I have to because we have an expert here. We saw the police chief and the Idaho State Police take a U-Haul and start bringing personal items out. I think this is a fair question to ask a criminal defense attorney. Is this something that is going to be brought up at this trial, in your opinion? And how much does this hurt crime scene preservation?
It's a very good question. I think that ultimately that's going to depend on what the precise nature of the defense is. If they, for example, pursue an alibi defense, then it wouldn't really matter what police did with the scene or not. But for example, like you pointed out, this is occurring after a lot of the collection and testing and documentation and so forth has already been done. So the potential for the challenge here, as I see it, is really if you are mounting a highly, highly technical defense where your objective is really to undercut the strength of all of these pieces of evidence that the police obtained by showing either they were obtained not properly, they didn't use correct techniques, there wasn't adequate protection, maybe cross-contamination, all kinds of things like that can be called into question, then I think that might be something that you would point out, because it would just be a way to kind of hammer the nail in. If your theory is that, well, the police identified this guy as a target, and once they targeted him, they're done looking elsewhere, it's just a question of pinning it on him, then the fact that you are taking these steps that can potentially limit your ability to go back and question or reevaluate your earlier actions that were taken, you can potentially use something like that to bolster a law enforcement mess this all up type of defense.
May I jump in on this? Because,
yes.
Because my criticisms, my critiques of it was the lack of PPE. Okay, that's it. Because some were wearing and some weren't. That was my biggest thing there, right? Having said that, the packing up of the house occurred after all those other items of evidence were collected. So it didn't impact that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the lack of PPE doesn't appear to have impacted the collection of some of the critical blood evidence or the critical DNA evidence off the knife. It doesn't appear to. It was a sole source male DNA, no cross contamination.
Right.
Okay.
And at that point, we didn't know that they had the sheath. And
right.
We didn't know about.
But I'm saying, again, the lack of PPE here does not seem to impact some of the crucial pieces of evidence that's found in the affidavit.
Right.
They don't affect that crucial evidence. What I think the issue would be is if any of that crucial evidence can be undermined. If, for example, the DNA on the knife sheath, as we talked about, if that's a small quantity, poor quality, not associated with any type of body fluid, it looks like touch DNA. We can argue secondary transfer on that all day. You can't prove that, that DNA was placed on that knife by Bryan Kohberger's hand. You can transfer DNA. It's very possible, I touch you and then I touch something else. Your DNA ends up on that thing that I touched.
Yeah, but you're going to have a mixture then at that point.
Well, you might, because some people are shedders and some people are not. So it can be a very messy picture. And this is why DNA, it is circumstantial still. It's a strong piece of evidence, but it doesn't tell you necessarily everything you need to know about the time and the manner of the deposition.
Right.
So these are questions that if those types of holes can be poked in the collection process, then the defense is going to be able to point to this after the fact and say, yeah, and see, they made it so that we can't go back and double check, and they couldn't go back and double check. We're just stuck with the sloppy work they did in the first place. You shouldn't penalize Mr. Kohberger for that. It's the state's burden to prove he's guilty.
Right. But there's nothing in the law that requires them to hold the scene for the defense team.
Oh, absolutely not. No, of course not.
So,
yeah, no.
yeah.
What's your thoughts on the Latah County prosecutor Thompson?
Because I was kind of late to this case, since, like I said at the beginning, I really didn't expect it to come to court this quickly. I didn't follow a lot of the early press releases and stuff like that he did. So it was really just when he announced that the suspect had been arrested that was kind of my first impression of him. My knee-jerk reaction, I have a positive impression of him. He reminds me of some of the prosecutors that I'm used to working with in small counties. Mm-hmm. Like everybody in the criminal justice system, there are so many stereotypes, and prosecutors often have the stereotype of like the Sam Waterston on Law and Order, kind of no nonsense, hard nosed, go get 'em. Yeah. Types of guys. And I really don't get that impression from him. He seems like a community guy. He seems like a guy that cares. I do think it's very important to him to do a good job. He doesn't want this thing to come back and to have to deal with it again. So that's just on first glance, I have a positive impression of him.
Yeah, I was just curious if he had a name for himself or something, like something that you would know from being on that side of the United States. But
yeah, not that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, for me,
but I can definitely look at it.
Yeah, he looked like he handled himself well in court today. He was prepared, he made his statement. He made, again, I got a good vibe from him. So I want to show your YouTube channel real quickly, because we're coming up on 2 hours here, and I usually have to pay Ed Wallace overtime after an hour. So I'm going deep into my pockets. But here's her YouTube channel. I'm going to just click on her latest video. She talked about the judge here, Judge, right? Is that his last name? Judge?
It is actually his name, Judge John C. Judge. Judge.
So here we have it. Everybody go on over to her YouTube channel. Give her a subscribe and check her out. She's got her stuff into chapters. She's very efficient with her videos. They're really right to the point, 17 minutes here. I really enjoyed watching this video today. It was informative. It came right straight to the point. So it wasn't really a lot of fluff. And I like what you do on your channel. So I'm hoping and I'm praying that since we made you read some, or we asked you to read some of this probable cause affidavit, hopefully you'll come back. Usually that's what we should be doing, is reading it, but it was a lot.
Well, I tell you what, the chat loved your voice over Ron and mine. So.
And then when I showed her reading it, that was even better. They were like, "Oh,
chat goes wild."
Yeah. Somebody said I sounded like a young Robert De Niro. I said, "You talking to me? Are you talking to me?
You talking to me?"
Yes. Listen, we hope and pray, obviously, for success in all of this. Whether this case and this situation is not going to, it's not going to be over in a short period of time, is what I was trying to say. This is going to take a while. We're in this for a long haul. There's a lot of steps. What's the next step from here? We know he was presented with what he's in there for, and now at what point are we going to get to this grand jury for the indictment? We want to see a true bill indictment and then go forward to a trial. No?
My understanding is that Idaho can charge just on an information and then hold him over to district court through this preliminary hearing process. So I don't believe they have to do a grand jury. That is just one of the options that they have to be able to get an indictment. So my understanding is they're going to be using this preliminary hearing process. He'll be next brought in for his arraignment. I think I saw that they're looking at scheduling that next week. His preliminary hearing, he then has a right to that within 14 days. And so that is kind of like a mini trial just on the issue of probable cause. They'll need to substantiate what they are presenting here in this affidavit. This affidavit technically is hearsay. This is just reporting information that the police received. And so for that hearing, they will need to bring in the witnesses who did the testing, did the collection, took all of these steps, and everything, to be able to establish that there is a reason to suspect that this guy is the one who committed the crimes.
And the next hearing is January 12th, correct? Yes, January 12th is what I heard.
Perfect.
I see everybody is loving you and loving the show, so thank you all for joining with us. Ed and I always like to just leave you guys with some final thoughts, and my final thought here is I'm going to ask everyone to please give support to these families, these victims, these surviving victims. Don't go and jump on the bandwagon and start jumping on the pile and passing judgment out. We don't know what these folks are going through. This is, like I said, worst case scenario, worst nightmare that you'd ever want to be having to go through. We went through Thanksgiving holiday, Christmas, New Year's here, and this could be, going for a long haul here. The best bet is to get around these folks and send prayers, strength, and positive vibes to not only the victims and their families, but to everyone in the community, because this community is shook. It is torn to its core over this tragic quadruple homicide here. They're not, like they say, this is not an area where you're having a high rate of crime. So please, get around these people and be that better person. Don't jump on that bandwagon. Ed, what do you got for the folks?
As usual, folks, please stay safe, stay prepared, watch your six, and a lot of love and prayers for everybody out there in the community. And like I said, let's give strength to this young lady, because she's got to testify. Absolutely.
Andrea, we'll give you the last word there too.
Ron, I'm just going to piggyback on what you say. And to the extent that it's possible for people, I would please implore you to also show grace to the Kohberger family. Yes, they're going to be facing very difficult questions, but it's important to bear in mind that the perpetrators' families can be victims as well. And they suffer in a way that is very isolating because they don't get a lot of sympathy for their struggle. So I just want to put that out there, because empathy is not a zero-sum resource. It takes nothing away from the families of the victims to also recognize the concern that the perpetrator's family may be suffering as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up. Listen, as I always like to end all of these, God bless the world. God bless the United States of America. And God bless each and every one of us here in the chat. But again, as I said, especially these 4 victims and their families, we send them strength, prayers, and positive vibes. On behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, we thank you for being here. And we thank you, our live audience, and the replay viewers. You guys are what makes this a great place. Leave us a comment down below in the comment section. Share, like, and subscribe. And if you're not yet following us, all things social media, one word, DutyRon. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and now on TikTok, against Ed's best wishes. I'll see you guys soon. Thank you again, Andrea, for being here, and we'll talk to you on the next one. Bye, guys. Good night.